do end up reading very similarly, but it's like which the superintendent is supposed to do and where go ahead.
All right, it is 6:30. I'm calling the policy meeting to order. Please stand and say the pledge. Flag's back there. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to the policy committee meeting. I'll do a roll call. To my left is Trustee Ginny Jeup on the policy committee. I am Valarie St. John, the chair of the policy committee. We have Deputy Superintendent Dr. Roy Bishop, Trustee Laura Hall, who is also a board member on the committee, and Superintendent Dr. Andrea Tuttle. So welcome everyone who has come. And if there are no objections to continuing with the agenda, we only have two things on our docket for information and discussion today. The first one is an update on the intra-district transfer policy language. We had talked about that at the previous meeting, and Dr. Bishop requested more time to run some things by our legal team and just talk with the central office team about what is going to be the best intra-district transfer policy to make sure that we maintain our neighborhood schools, but also do what's best for each individual student. So if you have a summary of
Absolutely, good
what
deal.
the changes are.
Thanks so much, I appreciate it. We did have a chance to be able to discuss this, and I need to talk to more stakeholders. But I just wanted to come back to the committee and talk a little bit about what we feel like might become the best course of action as far as moving forward. So as we talked about last time, we had used the word that transfers may be granted on rare cases. We did change that to be on a case-by-case basis. We felt like that was more of us having an opportunity to be able to talk to people to kind of find out what their needs are, especially what their student needs are. So we already have a current policy, which is policy 4.04, and we also have a current administrative guideline. So what we were talking about internally is taking a look at that same document, going through the same process that we would normally go through for high school transfers, but making sure that that was really available for all students who want to be able to transfer. But of course, we want to be able to look at different things. So when we're looking at some of the policies as far as allowing intra-district transfers, it's important that we think about not only just a student, one or two students being able to go to a certain school, but also the reasoning why. So of course, when we have a student right now that's at the high school level and they come to the committee to talk about what school they want to transfer to, we ask them several questions. And some of the questions we ask them are, what are some of the things that we could do to keep you in your current setting if there's anything? Are there any situational things that may be impacting your mental health? What is the reason for your transfers? Is transfer based upon just the legacy of your family? Because that's one of the things that is not honored right now in the transfer process. And that allows us as a committee to talk about what we can do to best support students. So when we talk about doing that at the elementary and middle school level, we want to continue to be able to do that, but we also want to do it without causing any programming changes or anything that will allow an imbalance within schools. So a prime example of that, let's say for instance we had several students who want to transfer out of Kirby and go to Defer. We want to be intentional about making sure that if that did happen, that it wouldn't create another section or go over the cap limit at Defer. That in itself would unfortunately allow us not to be able to do it because that would be a cost to the district. But if there was space available and the committee had a chance to be able to talk, connect with the families, understand why the need was there, then we would allow that to be able to take place. We did talk about for that to be able to run smoothly, it's important for us to have certain protocols in place. One of the protocols would be a transfer request window. So we've been talking about internally where the window will open up February 1st, and then it will close on March 15th, and then we will get back to all the families who've talked about a transfer. We'll get back to them by April 1st. That would be our primary transfer request window. Then we will have a secondary transfer request window that will open up on May 15th, and that will close on June 15th, and then we will get back to the family by July 1st. If it was something that came in, after that period, of course, we'll have an opportunity to be able to do that. But during that time period allows us to look at our staffing levels, it allows us to look at our attendance levels at every grade level and have the appropriate conversations. And July is one of those periods of time where maybe a lot of people might not actually be in the district. So we thought that would be appropriate.
Can I just, the agenda says that it's related to policy 8.09 and AG 8.09, but we're actually looking at 4.04.1 for the student transfer policy.
That is correct, yeah. Yep. So It should be 4.01. Is that not what got copied off of that? Yeah, I apologize if that's the wrong one. I do apologize about that. So we'll make sure that's
For reference,
that's
Mrs.
updated.
Figo is on vacation, so we were just lost without her, but we're trying. We're doing our best.
Absolutely, yep. So, but we are referencing policy 4.0 for, that's the policy we're referencing right now as far as the inter-district transfers. A couple of things that we talked about is that it's important that when we start doing potentially inter-district transfers, that we take the opportunity to really review that as a Board of Education. So while we will allow transfers, and we feel like certain situations should be allowable, we also need to make sure that we are year after year analyzing the transfers that are taking place is to kind of look for trends. If there are certain trends that are happening, what can we do to make sure we either mediate those trends or we're talking to families to find out the why behind some of those situational things as they're looking, and then also have administrative meetings to see how can we curtail some of those things that may be happening. I think it's also important to mention when families are coming to talk about transfers, there may be some situational things that we may not be able to help support. So for instance, if someone is in a categorical program and they're asking for a transfer, if that program isn't offered at that school, we don't think they should come out of that categorical programming because that wouldn't allow them the best support as far as their educational journey. So we want to make sure that whatever supports they need, if they are there, that we're honest and transparent about those being there. But if not, it's probably best suited for them to be in a current environment because we can't pick up an entire categorical program to go to another school.
So do you have a draft policy that you'd like us to look at now, or were you just updating us on?
No, I'm just
Okay.
updating you guys right now as far as our internal conversations. And if this is something that I said that you want us to be able to go back to be able to look at, we do have a little bit of time as far as when this needs to go into effect. But we do feel like on case-by-case situations, especially at the elementary and middle school, it's like at the high school level, we do want to entertain transfers, what that looks like to be able to best support our families throughout the district. So I just wanted to hear from this group here as far as any questions that you may have that you want us to go back as an administrative team to be able to look, or anything that I said today that might give you pause. That way we can make sure we're continuing to have the conversation that we're creating the most robust system possible. But we do feel like we do need a system. It can't just be somebody says, I want to transfer, and it just happens.
Well, where are we seeing the most pushback? Like I know when we were going through Brownell, you know, the Brownell split from into the high schools. Is there certain areas you're seeing a lot more transfer requests?
Yeah, I mean, it used to be out of the Monteith split, as far as when they used to go to Parcells and Brownell, but since we've solved that one, we really haven't had many families connect with us about transfers. There may be some one-off conversations that we've had, but we haven't seen many trends when it comes to that. But once again, it's been, from our standpoint, you know, for the last couple of years, it hasn't, the language has been no transfers at the elementary, middle school level. So we may have more of those conversations, but it hasn't been one that has been talked about a lot within our elementary families.
We try that in private schools. We have quite a few private school students that want to come back upon it.
Yes, yes, we have to have private school entities that come back and they're like, okay, I want to be able to go to this school because either my other child went to this school or we're currently in the middle of moving, and what does this look like for us when we come back from private school?
And when you say that the Monteith split was solved, that is because you're allowing transfers now
Correct.
for Monteith students who want to either stay at Brownell or go to Parcells, whichever one they were not zoned for, to stay with their peer group.
Correct. For the last 2 years, what we've done as far as for the Monteith fourth grade families, we've contacted them and we've given them the option to see if they wanted to be able to continue to go to Brownell, then go to North, or they want to continue to go to Parcells and then go to North. But most of the families are like, okay, I want my child to be able to continue to go to Parcells because they're going to be with their friends again at North anyway. So it's hard for them to make two transitions in those 4 years.
Has that resulted in any overcapacity at Parcells or any problems with like not having the equality between the schools?
No, it has not. But it's actually easier at middle school and high school to have some of those bulk changes. Because when you think about elementary school, I'm looking at, I'm kind of tabulating right now the enrollment at some of the elementary schools. Some of them are already getting tight. And so like, if someone comes to us at a certain period of time in May or June, some of those classrooms may already be at capacity. So then the conversation becomes, how do we work it out where you might not be able to go to that school, but we can best support you in your current school because we don't want to go over the size of
Which schools are considered tight this year?
Considered tight this year? I think there are certain grade levels that are tight. Like I believe there might be a merit grade level. I believe a fourth grade that might be a little tight. There may be a deferred class that might be tight. I don't think any one school is kind of tight, but there are different grade levels where it's like we really want to sit back and think and look at all the students that are in that classroom and what support that they need before we just automatically say yes to a transfer.
I had a couple of questions.
Sure.
How does this affect siblings? So if a student's older sibling went to a specific school, would they automatically then be allowed to follow that to keep families together? Do we do that?
Great question. So that's something that we consider that we would like to get to happen if that family would like that to happen. Right now, already in our policy, if you have a child that's in a categorical program, the sibling can already go with you. So we'd like to get out of that as well with the transfer, but we also want to make sure there's space available.
Right.
So we have had
A little
situations
caveat.
before. Yeah, we had situations before where there's space for one student, not the other, and we can't go over that limit
Right.
to make that happen. So we let the family know, like, this is your choice. You can keep your children here if you want to, but if you want one child to go here, or we'll let them know, put them like on a wait list
Okay.
when the space becomes available in that classroom. But it wouldn't be a situation where we would allow the classroom to take on more students than what
Just
they
because.
have.
Okay. Another question I had is you talked about allowing Monteith families to choose at that point
Mhm.
when they're going to middle school. Do we allow the families at Brownell to then have that same opportunity if they've been with their classmates for the last 4 years and then choose to want to go to South or choose to go to North at that point? Is
Yes,
that-
we have.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, because once again, it gets down to that student impact.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
as
I
far
mean,
as
it's the
like-
relationship piece of this and community
Correct.
building. and-
Correct. And I think now more than ever, like when we talk about like the mental health of students, you know, even with my own daughter, I'm talking to her like friendships are a big thing.
Mhm.
You know, and when you get that core group of friends, that really can rock you as far as
Right,
not being able
especially
to
at that
have that,
age,
especially
that
at
middle
that
school
age.
is
Yeah,
very
middle school's
critical.
already awkward enough.
Mhm.
You know, so it's like we don't want to create more awkwardness. So we do try on a case by case basis to make that work.
Okay.
If students have multiple friends in multiple different areas, it's a conversation. But if they have a good group of friends, especially if they went through, you know, some situational things as far as bullying or whatever it might look like, we do like to keep them with their peer group because we find that students are more successful when they have that outlet.
Mhm. Another question I had was, you talked about looking for trends. Will we
Mhm.
have, now that we're opening this up to different, or possibly opening this up to different levels, a system in place to track that? So like a data recording system in terms of like, okay, these fifth graders came from here and these fourth
Mhm.
graders came from here, and then you start to see some trends. Would that be something, I mean, it doesn't have to be super
Yeah, we can't.
specific, but it makes sense then to try to track that if we're gonna be looking for trends.
For sure, yeah. Based upon what we would have the families fill out, which would be a form stack.
Mhm.
On the back end of that is an Excel
Okay.
spreadsheet. They'll be able to track that for us, and
Yeah.
we can break it down and create pivot tables and kind of pinpoint where certain trends are happening.
Okay.
So yeah, we can have that, but if there's extra information, extra data that the board would like for us to be able to look into, let us know. We can try to build it into our system.
Okay. And I had one last question. The mention was students coming back from private schools, which is fantastic. I guess a concern I have of that is like, I don't know if that's something that we're allowing as like a negotiating tool. Like, we'll come back if we can go to this school, where maybe that's not equitable in terms of maybe some other families had wanted to do that who've been in district at the same time. So how do we handle that? And like, well, we'll come back if we can go to this middle school, or if we can, you know, join this elementary school. I think I might have an issue with that being a priority placed on that as like a bargaining chip, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah, that's actually a good discussion. Me and the families who are coming back aren't using it like that.
Mhm.
And that
I would think
I
not.
can see.
I just can see how it could
Right.
be.
I think something we need to think about though. Like I have to
Mhm.
make sure that's not it. But as of right now, a lot of families aren't saying that. They're just saying, okay, can these be these options either based upon this or based upon relationships or based upon the peers who have
Mhm.
gravitated here. But I think some of them will come back even if it was, okay, you had to go to this school.
Mhm.
They're still looking at the overall experience that their child would have. And we're seeing that, especially at the private school level, many families are coming back at a certain kind of like break in
Mhm.
service. So some of them might be coming back in 8th grade, right, because they're getting ready for high school. Or some might be coming back at that cusp of, you know, 5th grade, or they're starting before school.
Mhm.
You know, like if they start, we can get them in during kindergarten. That's even better, but it's usually a break in service,
Right.
usually from daycare, going into kindergarten, or going from, you know, 5th grade or 8th grade.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Yeah. But great, that's something I gotta take it right down for us as a team, maybe to talk a little more about.
So can I request that the policy also include, or maybe the AG corresponding to it, also include an annual update to the board about which, even if it's not at a meeting, but just in like a communication to the board of which schools are seeing a trend, which schools have an influx, which schools have a lot of people requesting transfers out, so that we can ask more questions if there seems to be a problem with one particular school, or if there, as we discussed before, if there might be a civil rights issue. We want to make sure that we notice it before the MDCR does.
Yeah,
Well,
for
and
sure.
tied to that, also maybe even the reasons, not that it has to be tied to a family or a specific student, but we're seeing this because of, we want to keep social groups together, or we're seeing like bullying. If we see that coming from a school more than once, that's obviously an issue, but I think that would be useful information, not just like 5 kids left this school and went to another school.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
don't actually feel like that needs to come to the board table. I mean, we have experts, Dr. Tuttle and Dr. Bishop here. You're vetting this and you're telling us it's good, and you're making the decision whether families are allowed to move. I think that's good enough right there. I don't think we need annual micromanaging session in that case.
Whatever the board decides, we will
Yeah,
continue to
that's
report
the
whatever.
rest
is
of
needed.
If you can put it in the draft and we can discuss it at the board table as far as each
Sounds good.
specific thing. If the board does not want to get that update, I just think more information is always better, especially because the administration has a lot of work to do, and sometimes it's good to have fresh eyes looking at something and saying, wait, are we seeing a trend here? And like I said, I want to notice it before the MDCR does, so that we
Yeah,
don't
whatever
have
the
that
board,
issue.
yeah, whatever the board decides, we definitely will provide that report.
Yep, we can discuss that at full board table. So for next steps, would you like to go back to your team and continue to work on this?
Yes, that I want to formalize it like a little bit more. Like I want to have them kind of like ask all the questions, you know, because I also want to make sure I go through, here are the questions that we're going to ask families. When they do come in, here's the process, here's what the form stack will look like. You want to update that.
So the
we
AG
can
will
bring
have
that
the
back.
form stack, like what the actual form stack would look
No,
like?
it won't have that, but I
Okay.
at least want the board to be able to see kind of like what we currently do. That way you know what an elementary and middle school family will go through if they are requesting that. And just the overall process for us to continue to be able to go through. And then I also want to solidify the windows. Make sure we're checking with our enrollment team that the windows are kind of fitting within that time frame. Just kind of button some things up. I think it's just important to have one more glance at it to make sure that we're on the right track with everybody. But I think we still will have it in time in case anybody wants to look at it for next year.
Okay, so would you like to bring a draft policy to the May policy
Yes,
committee meeting?
please.
Or do you want to bring it straight to the board? Would you like to be able to get it approved in order to have a May 15th to June 15th window? I forget what you said.
Well, May gives it enough time to do that and then a 2-read.
So you're saying May does? You said if I
Well,
bring
if
it
we
to
bring
the
it
board?
back here, yeah, then.
So you're saying bring it back here?
Depending on when you
What
want
do
to
you
start the
think?
window.
What do you
Yeah,
think?
I'm
What do
fine
you
with bringing it
think,
back here in
Dr.
May.
Tuttle?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with bringing it back here in May, then we can take it to the board for the next steps.
And right now, just while we're on the subject, so let's say I have a kid in middle school and 6th grade,
Mm-hmm.
and I move to the other end of the district, whatever that looks like. Does that child get to stay in that school for the remainder of the 2 years that they have, like their 7th grade and their 8th grade?
So say that one more time. You have a.
So just say I'm right now I'm at South with
Okay.
Mariana, okay? So she's a freshman, just say I move to, I don't know, wherever, somewhere in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
Can Mariana stay at South for the next 3 years? Or does she transfer to North?
I
If
think
she
it-
has her friend groups and her teachers and her
I think it all
counselors.
depends on the parents' family dynamic, the conversation. I've had some who want to switch immediately because their friends are now who are right across the street are also going, and some people want to be able to stay.
But you have the option.
Yeah, if you want to be able to stay there, we will look to try to make that happen.
Okay. I'm
And
not
there's
moving.
something with that. Is it the
Just-
1 year if they move, they get
I
to
have
finish
people
out
ask me
the
all the time.
year, or
I-
what is the?
I'm not
something's
sure
in
that,
the-
is it say 1 year? I mean, my opinion on that is if they started at the school, let them finish, if that's their choice to do so, just they stay with their graduating class and their peer group, and
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right now the
I
policy
think that
says.
seems, is it 1 year?
Yeah, right now the policy says 1 year.
But I think
So
that
do you
that
need to
would be.
loosen that up while we're rewriting this a little?
We can. That policy only equates to, I think, we can look at that one. I can
think we
look at that
still
one.
have
Yeah.
flexibility on that as administration, correct,
Mhm.
Dr. Bishop?
Yeah,
So-
if
If
you're
it fit
changing
into a
this.
peer group, you could request it, and if it fit into those categories, then that makes
I
sense.
don't see why we would ever make a child move that started at a particular school. That
Mhm.
would seem not fair. The student.
you know, we can bring
Or
it back.
just to disrupt they've already been disrupted with the move. Why would we just further disrupt the educational process if the parent chooses?
Mhm.
Any other questions about the inter-district transfer policy? We'll talk about it more next month. And then moving on to third-party information and communication as it relates to FERPA, unless you had anything else, Dr. Bishop.
No.
So that is both policy 8.09 and policy 4.17 is why we had both of those linked. And that came about because we recently had a third-party organization access our district email to send out some great information, but the concern of some parents is that specifically under 4.17, email address for students is not considered directory information, so it should not have been disclosed at all under FERPA. And in this case, students were directed to a Google form to fill out other information that could have included a lot of personal information.
But did it include personal information?
In some cases, yes, because the students were not aware that their parents would not be comfortable with third parties having that information. So I think and we discussed this, that it is a FERPA violation, so we want to make sure that we're being really clear with staff about how if an outside organization.
So what was
wants
the
to-
specific example? I feel like we're talking in code.
Okay.
What happened exactly?
So in this specific, I'm not going to obviously talk about a particular student or family, but in this specific example, an organization was sending out an advertisement for a scholarship, a teacher award. The Luminary Teacher Awards is what it was.
What was the organization?
I believe it was Pointers for Academic Excellence. I'm not sure why it's not a district organization. It wasn't the PTO. So they sent out emails to students, or the teachers forwarded the emails to the students, which directed them to a Google form where students put their name, their parents' name, their email address, which isn't directory information, and then why they wanted that to nominate that teacher, which is great, but in some cases, why I want to nominate that teacher is she helps me when I really struggle in reading, or I have a lot of trouble focusing because of my ADHD, and this teacher is really great with me about it. And for obvious reasons, parents don't want their child's educational special needs, for example, shared with an outside organization without their knowledge or permission. So we just want to make sure that that is in the future not sent directly to students' emails, and that students aren't directed to Google forms that are held by anyone outside of the district.
So this went to who? This went to freshmen, or this went to junior
No, it
and
went.
high school children?
I don't know if it matters, because we just want to make
totally
sure it
matters.
doesn't
I mean,
move
these are
forward to
scholarships.
have this continue.
Sometimes
Do you-
parents are
do you know
working
who-
hard. I'd want to know. I want my kid to know about a scholarship when they're on top, so that they're on top of
Let's
it.
let administrators answer if they know.
Yeah,
Do you
so-
know what grade levels it was
Yeah,
sent to?
it actually went to most of our students, as far
So
as.
K-12.
Correct, yep. And I think the one thing too is, I think we want to be proactive based on what we've learned through this experience.
Mhm.
And so I think, from an administration standpoint, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Tuttle, we just want to make sure things that are coming to our district, great opportunities, whatever they may be, but we also have a system that comes in so that the district is not liable for certain things that may be well intended, but at the same time is maybe we didn't have a chance to look at it or own some of the materials that were put into the Google Docs. So this will give us an opportunity to make sure students and families to have access to it, but it's going through a system. And once again, all these things which are great are also third-party entities that are not, adjacent to us as a school district. So we feel like being able to use our peach jar system still continues to give people the same access, the same opportunity for these things. And I've had a chance to talk to some entities that are outside of our district, even PFAE, around this, and there was no pushback as far as this would be an opportunity to continue to do these things for our district.
So in this case, let's take the scholarship. How would you have preferred that
I
process
misspoke about it being a
took
scholarship.
place?
This was an award for nominating a teacher for like a recognition. So that was sent out to all students, and because their teachers or principals sent it out to them, rather than being one of the flyers in the peach jar, some thought they had to fill it out. They assumed that it was something from the school and that their parents wouldn't have a problem with them giving their name, their parents' name, other information that's not directory information. And some students were opted out of directory information who filled that out because kindergarten, first grade, second grade, they don't always know.
So they were nominating a teacher.
Yeah, they were nominating a teacher, which is great. But
But
since
giving their personal information in the process.
yeah, to a third party,
Mhm.
and that's the issue. If the school had been managing the Google document, that would have been different, but they weren't. So we want to make it clear that that's that the Peach Jar system is the best way for those kinds of advertising to come through and for those kinds of notifications to come through, because that way we're not liable for these FERPA violations.
I think it's also something that we gotta think about where, you know, there's consistently being new entities that are popping up. And I think the conversation sometimes may continue to have, well, you did this for so-and-so, why don't you go ahead and do it for me the same way? And I think we don't wanna be in that ballgame where we're picking and choosing while we're doing what for whom. So if we can have a simplified system that we have now, where people go through, they are vetted, they have this P-Chart system, it just makes sense for administration, you know, as far as how we are taxed with our time that we go through this to continue just making mainstream.
Well, what is this simplified system? So I'm an ABC organization and I want to tell people about something going on in town, Girl Scouts, whatever. I don't
Are you
know.
familiar with the Peach Jar flyers?
Yeah, I get
Yeah,
them.
so
Mhm.
that's what it is.
Okay, so what is the process there? So is it, I've never, what do you call them up on the phone? Do you submit it through a website?
No, it's an online
Is it free?
portal. It's an online portal in which you would put your information in, and then from there it will be previewed. And then I think it's a certain day throughout the week in which all the information is pushed out to families.
So I take my flyer, I just send it to a website.
Mhm.
Let me finish. Send it to a website. They either approve it or not,
Mhm.
and they put it out to our kids.
That's correct.
Okay.
And I think then it comes to the parents'
Correct.
email and they can
The parents also
disseminate
see it.
information. And partly with this issue, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it went on our Schoology pages, which is
Correct.
like a district thing. So then it seems as if it's coming directly from the district at that point, like as a student, they see it like, oh, I need to do this because it's on my Schoology page. So I think the same idea, like you said, this group wants to do it, then this group wants to do it. You want to make sure that everybody has the same process.
Mhm. Yes, and same access.
Excuse me.
Bless you. You allergic to this conversation?
You.
And to clarify, you spoke with our legal team about how to clarify these administrative guidelines and policies to make sure that they're aligned with FERPA.
That's correct.
So that's a lot of the issue too. It's we don't need to open ourselves up to more liability by even accidentally violating FERPA by sending out these Google forms.
So I just want to bring up the point that, you know, the agenda went out on Saturday at 10 a.m., right? But nothing was attached to it. So none of the attachments with this stuff came through until noon, 12:05 today. So, you know, I've had from then until now running around town doing other things. So you need to get more organized and give us more time to be able to review what's going on and give the public a chance to review this stuff because, you know, it was a 5-hour window and I just,
Right.
so I think we need to bring it back. What are you asking us to do
I'll
here
be completely
specifically?
transparently about that. Like, and I do apologize. That's totally on me, right? Like, I did want to make sure, because me and Dr. Tuttle didn't have a chance to connect on Friday. I wanted to make sure Dr. Tuttle had a chance to connect with me on Monday about some of the things I was putting on the policy agenda. That's what I always want to do as deputy. I never want to step, you know, out of line as far as things I communicate with the Board of Education. So I didn't have a chance to do that until Monday. I do apologize that the materials got to you late within that. You know, in hindsight, maybe I'll look to do that differently. I did ask Dr. Tuttle today as far as for over the weekend when I'm doing some work. Do I have a permission just to give you the items then? And I will do that in the future. So like that's my intent. It was never the intent for you to come to the meeting and to not be prepared. So, you know, but I will tell you, after the board meeting last week, our entire agenda and everything we're doing has shifted as far as everything that we're doing. So once again, I do apologize. You know, safety continues to be our main priority as far as our conversations. But I will do better as far as making sure you have the information.
And if we had the meetings on Tuesdays, that would give us Monday, right? I mean, you're talking,
I
Right.
get it. I understand, but I just want to go on
we
record
all
saying-
would do better if we had a
Right.
Tuesday meeting. Maybe we should consider moving these meetings to Tuesdays just to get.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying I
Everybody-
apologize for not getting information to you earlier, and so like I will look to do that better and differently in the future.
We appreciate your help. Thank you.
I
You do
understand.
great, Roy. I'm not.
And
Dr. Bishop.
Dr. Bishop is always very considerate of talking to me, but we did talk today, and I said you could just get the stuff out, you know.
Correct.
defense, I was not in on Friday to assist with that, so.
Well, and we did know which policies, I have copies of all of these policies, and are they online?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so we can always look
Yeah,
those up
we
too
we
if
have
need
an
to.
online
Well,
policy.
we're making the changes, right? So you have to review the changes, so.
Right. I think
That's the point.
Changes were not finalized until
Mhm.
now, but that's also why we don't make decisions in these committee meetings, because we don't always get the drafts until the day of. We're looking at them,
I
making
know
sure
when I
that
chaired, I
they're.
gave people plenty of time to review. That's just how I ran it when I was just asking you if you could do the same, because, 12:05 is not exactly
It
a
is.
lot of time. So you can argue it, you can defend it, it's fine, it happened, but it does make it a little bit difficult to have this
I'm
meeting.
sorry, you're finding it difficult. So, is there anything else
So
that we
you're
wanted
finding
to
your
talk
job
about,
difficult.
policy 8.09 or 4.17 specifically? Anything in the policy that's a concern? Anything in the administrative guidelines that is not clear? Dr. Bishop, are you comfortable with us taking both of these two policies revised to the next board meeting for approval?
The one I'm bringing back to you, the first one I'm bringing back to you.
I know, but 8.9 is actually related to third-party information.
Yes, yes,
So those policies that are related to FERPA and third-party
Correct.
information,
correct.
you're okay with us putting that on the next agenda? Is that okay with you, Dr. Tuttle?
For sure.
Okay, so that will be on the next regular board meeting agenda. And then if there's no other concerns about the policies,
Well, I just have a quick question. So where did this initial bringing it to Peachtree come from? Was this a request of the administration?
I don't know that it was, I think this was the administration's solution to some parent complaints upon finding that there, specifically some children who had been opted out of directory information, which if you look at the directory information, that basically means somebody calls into school and you can't even tell them that the kid goes there. Like some people are very concerned about their kid's privacy, so having a third party have all that information.
Well, this is a simple question. Was it generated from the administration saying this is an issue, or was it generated from you saying it's an issue? Let's talk about it.
I was not aware it was an issue until parents complained about
So
their.
what I hear you
students' private
saying
information.
is, it was you that brought it to the administration's attention.
No, parents brought it to
So
the
the administration
attention.
brought it to,
I'm not sure.
parents
what
brought
you're
it to
getting
your attention?
I will
It's a
say,
fair question.
right, I will say they brought it to my attention. And I had a chance and opportunity to be able to connect with multiple people about it, and even separate entities that we have working on our behalf that are not inside of the district. So there definitely was parent, and there definitely was people who questioned me about it, which led me to go to our law team. And so I don't know
Okay.
who talked about it first, but I just want to let you know, like
It was an issue.
there is people who came to me and talked to me about this, and even talked about some of the further complaints. So that was brought up.
Some parents are very concerned about their children's privacy, even beyond just like email addresses and things. They don't want their kid's photo on anything. They don't want it to be
Understand that.
identified that their child goes to that school. Sometimes there's custody issues or dangerous relatives. Like we need to be mindful of that. And if a parent is choosing for their kid's information to be private and then finding out that it got disclosed to a third party without their knowledge and they don't know who
I
owns that
understand that.
server. So that was the concern, and I appreciate the administration coming up with the solution of, oh, we'll just have everybody go through Peachtree, and that way it is coming to everyone, to the parents. They can see what those flyers are. It's not a Google form from your teacher, which was kind of the concern, that it made some students, especially younger students, feel like they had to fill it out, even if their parents had opted them out of the directory information. So that was all.
So they were
appreciate the
getting
solution.
you're saying the kindergartners and things were getting it to their email?
Yes.
Wow.
So
All my kids went
So
to
like-
school, they didn't have email.
So like when I say like most students were getting it right, I don't think kindergartners are not checking email. Or I don't think they even have access to an email. So it's not really like the kindergartners per se, but like the students
Just want to
who,
be clear.
yeah, students who did have access, especially to Schoology and things like that, like they
That's
were
right,
getting
Schoology.
it. Yeah, it's like it's
Yeah.
really from Schoology. So Schoology, that's mostly the secondary base. They were looking at middle and high school. Yeah, so like my statement as far as like all students, no, it's like I think it was secondary students to be specific.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I know definitely fifth graders, and I can say, if my seventh grader went, because I heard about this issue, I asked him, did you get this email? He said, no. And I looked through his inbox, and he did get it. And he said, oh, I don't open any emails from the principal. So a lot of students probably didn't read them, but there were enough concerns that I appreciate that the administration came up with this blanket third-party process for just everybody to go through Peachtree, and we won't have this issue again.
And it wasn't a personal preference issue, it was a safety and security issue, and we talked about it as our priority, so that makes sense.
Any other concerns about the policies as they are?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so we'll have public comments, and as usual with committee meetings, you can just raise your hand, stand up, say your name. We'll still keep it to 3 minutes. I will get my timer so that will be fair to everyone's time. Does anybody have a comment for this? Okay, go ahead.
This isn't related to what you're talking about. It's just I don't come to these meetings a lot.
Can you say your
And
name?
I
for the
did
record,
hear
please?
about this young man who came to the board meeting and was threatening. And that is very concerning. And then I was at a 13th District Congressional Town Hall with Shri Sanadar. And I had seen the video of this young man, and I'm sitting there, and here's the same young man with his backpack on. And I don't even remember what he said there. There was a conversation. Oh, that's who that is. Anyway, I just wanted to voice my concerns that young man was there and was threatening. And I've heard that he can't come on school property. It's just, there's so much access to information and people and where you're at. Like if I was the person that person had said something against it, it would have really made me crazy and nervous and fearful for my life. So I just wanted to bring that here and say that rather than just keeping an eye on the guy, like, something more needs to happen with regard to him being in that meeting and saying something like that at the meeting. The fact that he can't come on school property, that's good. And I just think in today's times with access to information and all that kind of stuff that maybe something more should have happened.
Can you state your name for the record? So I have
Dana Coyne, D-A-N-A, Coyne, C-O-Y-N-E.
Thank you. I didn't mean to cut you off if you still want to say.
No, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Do either of our administrators want to just state where we're at with that law enforcement's awareness?
We typically don't respond to public comment, but I will just share that we're working very closely with law enforcement.
Okay, good. Thank you so much.
And you're correct, there is a no trespassing for district property.
And what?
There is he was
yeah.
served a no trespassing for district property, so.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Ms. Pappas?
Lisa Pappas, Grosse Pointe City. Just to start with the Peachtree and the privacy issue. Peachtree is a platform that a lot of schools are using pretty recently in the last couple of years since COVID to send out school newsletters and things like that. This is a perfect time to address that at a policy meeting because I think it's something that schools should be, every digital platform that you enroll our students in, I think you need to have some really good checks and balances and investigations into what kind of information is released. Every child that signs up for, and Peachtree is just a way to send out, but there's a reason those companies exist. And data mining is a huge problem right now with all of our students across the country. This has been discussed in a number of journals, a number of educational things. So I'm just gonna leave this with the policy committee. This would be a great topic for this committee to investigate because every time a child logs in Grosse Pointe schools, if they're using a Google app, if they're using Schoology, if they're using Peachtree, whatever it is, there's a lot of information and I'm sure you're aware of like the hacking incidents that have happened at hospitals. I mean, I have a stack of notices for myself, my kids, my parents about their privacy being hacked through St. John's. My dad had all kinds of information because he was in the St. John Providence system for something. He had a specialist do that. And they had that whole thing where they couldn't even access anything, prescriptions, medical histories, and it lasted for quite a while. So I think schools are really behind the curve on this. So I think this is would be a really good thing for the policy committee to dig into further. To come back to what this woman addressed, that was why I came to speak I actually spoke right after that young man, and I didn't hear the end of it. I didn't hear what he said because I was behind him. The sound quality isn't good, especially on the left side of the auditorium, but when I was sitting at the back of Brownell during that meeting, he was very agitated, and I pointed him out to a friend of mine and said, have you ever seen that guy before? Because he was rocking in his chair, he was clapping, he was rubbing his hands, he seemed very agitated. And so he caught my eye before any of this transpired. I did not hear his comments because I was walking up. So I was horrified when I got back to my seat because I wouldn't have said the comments I said had I actually heard what he said. I also know that up on that stage we've had other cases where the sound quality to the board members is not great. So I don't know what happened, but I do know that Dr. Tuttle had the correct response to the situation. She handled it exactly the way a leader of the district should. I was very impressed with the way she handled it and reacted to the situation. I was very taken aback by the lack of response on the board table from anyone else, and I was also quite honestly very disturbed by the fact that 2 other administrators did not walk with her. I've never seen that in all the situations I've been involved in. I've been involved in a few. I've never seen a situation where the administrative team didn't go together to handle a serious incident. So
Thank you.
I think that's something that should be looked at. It certainly bothered me.
Thank you. That's 3
And
minutes.
I'm not done.
But
I'd like
everybody
to know,
gets 3 minutes,
Ms.
so are there
well,
any
I'd
other
like to know,
public
Ms.
comments?
Ms. St. John,
You're
did
free
you
to
know
email
him
the
because
board
you
anytime.
smiled when he said Luigi Mangione?
Ma'am, I
You
don't not
smiled.
never met that man.
You smiled
Your
great.
public comment
Did
is
you know
over.
him?
Does anybody else
I'd
have
like
public
you to
comments?
categorically tell us if you knew him.
I just told you I've never met that man before in my life. So please stop screaming at me. That is one
I'm
of
not
the issues
screaming,
that we
but I'm angry at what
Okay.
happened.
All right. Are there any other public comments? Maybe about the policies? Yes?
Yeah, just going to the earlier conversation, I did speak with Dr. Bishop about what our intentions were, and I think that this came up at the board meeting last week about assuming good intentions. I know some people don't assume good intentions when we present things from the PFAE, and that's unfortunate, but everything that we've been doing has been geared towards providing supports to the teachers and the students and the families in our district. So when Dr. Bishop and I discussed how the Google form was presented, we came up with a very amicable solution for what we would do going forward. It was an easy conversation to have, and we understood, and he understands too, that we were just asking for a district email in order to verify that it was a district student. It wasn't to data mine, it wasn't to provide a mailing list of any kind in the future. All we were doing was just verifying that it's in fact a student that was doing that. And the whole event was to culminate in this awards for the teachers, which we think is a really great idea. So going forward, we understand how to administer those things and get those things delivered. I just want you to know that that is our intention. So in part of that, and assuming the good intentions, and I think people, I want to speak just a little bit to decorum and audience decorum, and I know it happens, that we have meetings and people get emotional and there's topics that are hot topics, but in general, for some reason, the trending on the board meetings has been to have more audience engagement and more combative audience members and people confronting speakers directly. I pointed this out a few meetings ago. I was told that there's police at every meeting, which there are not. I hope there are going forward for obvious reasons. But the tenor of the meetings has become one where it seems to be audience participation and not necessarily limited to public comments, which we had a whole bunch of policy meetings about public comments, and now public comments has extended into extended applause and favoring some sides over others. And I really think that is part of the problem, and what fuels people like the person that came in is for the appreciation that they might receive or the empowerment they might get when they go after individuals. And so I think it was clear outside of whether people could hear it or not. I heard the comments clear as day. I heard them the second they were said, and I was concerned immediately. And I'm not so sure other people were as focused on the comments as tends to be the problem at some of the meetings as well, with people on their phones when they're not engaging the audience, public speakers directly and listening to them. So I think overall, I think that some comments that were made earlier this week about people having some general rules about behavior at the meetings, and making it more civil, that goes to everybody, the audience, the board, everybody. And I think that that's only been applied to certain situations, and it should apply in a broader sense to everybody that comes to these meetings and participates, so that we create an environment where things can get done and people feel comfortable coming there and don't feel like they're going to come to a circus when they come to the meetings. So thanks again, Dr. Bishop, for the phone call, and we want to work with the district going forward in every way possible. So thank you so much.
Anyone else? All right, so we have committee member comments. Trustee Jeup, if you have anything else you'd like to add?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Dr. Tuttle?
How's that? Thank you.
Trustee Hall?
I just want to thank Dr. Bishop for doing the background work on this again.
Thank you.
Dr. Bishop?
Thank you for your time, everybody.
Okay, I just want to clarify for everyone that our next steps are to, Dr. Bishop's going to bring a final draft about interdistrict transfer policy language to our May committee meeting. And the next full board meeting will have a first read for both policy and AG 8.09 and policy and AG 4.17 as relates to third-party information and communication, which, yes, it will just apply to everyone. No harm was intended, but we want to make sure we have those policies on the books so that parents don't have that concern. And with that, we are adjourned.